Okie dokie, hello. It's Riikka Kovasin here, and we're doing some ATCs today. But let's first see that everything is working. So I'll wait a minute or two to see that if somebody's on and if everything is working. Let me see. I'm not totally sure if I can see the comments again. Okie dokie, now nope. I'm not totally sure if everything is okay. Maybe I should have my laptop again on, but, well, I'm going to wing it. And hopefully this is live and everything is working, because I can't see any comments or anybody watching even, so I'm not totally sure. Okay, now we have one online, so probably this is going to work. So hello, it's Riikka Kovasin from Finland here, and today we are doing some ATCs. These are fun little or cute little things, but the main point I have is kind of creating the background, let's say, because it's a fun way to start any project with kind of series. So hello, and thank you for joining. I'm thinking I can't see the comments, unfortunately, so if you have any questions, please just type them in and I'll get back to you afterwards and reply them then. I'm not sure why this group affects so that I can't see the comments, but too bad. I'm sorry about that. So something like this is what we're making, but when it comes to projects, I usually go with more is more kind of thing. So I'm trying to remember to say where you can use something else or like skip it totally. So let's get started. The first thing, if I'm working on a series, and these are a series of ATCs, so usually I make always a set of ATCs and not just one. So something like this is then handy. These are kind of leftovers, so you get the idea. So even though I would be making, let's say, 3 ATCs, I usually make one big sheet starting the project, because then I can use it to art journal or collage or make cards or whatever. Also, if you make a series of cards, that is a good way to start to make your kind of own. I call it master sheet. That's not the correct term probably, but it's just to kind of give you the idea that it's the first thing I do. 2 ways, because it's breaking the blank page is kind of the first thing you do. If you have a jelly plate, you can use that. But if you don't have, you can just put the paint directly to your paper, or then use the 2. It's kind of just slapping some paint. I made something earlier, so I left the paint in the jelly plate, and let's see if I can move it to this place. Well, some of it. And the colors I chose are taken from the focal point. Come on. So they are
from, okay, I'm not going to say it right, but P13, I can't say it, but P13, a Polish company making papers. So the little characters like these, I just had to buy the collection because of these, because I love tea and they were so cute. So the colors I'm now using to make this sheet are kind of taken from the collection, so that's a way to get started, kind of, and everything goes together because the colors you're using are taken from what you're then going to use as the focal point. When I do jelly printing, like actual jelly prints and not just adding color to a piece of cardstock, I like to use a bit more fluid. These are just hobby acrylic paints, so to me those, or then Amsterdam Talens are good. For jelly printing, the impasto paints, which I also put in, they are a bit too heavy, so it's hard to apply them to the plate so that there actually would be a good coverage. They are more like blobs of color. But again, if you don't have a jelly plate, you can do this simply by adding color directly to the sheet. And as you can see, I'm just randomly applying because this is the first layer. Those of you who came a little bit later, let me just say again that unfortunately I can't see the comments at the moment, so I'll go through them afterwards. And whenever I'm making a project, it's kind of more is more, so that's why there's a lot of different products in this, but I'm trying to remember to say if there's something you can use or swap or just not use at all. So that was the first layer, just really easy going. Then let's make some more. You could naturally do more layers using the jelly paint, but in this case it's just kind of my starting point. You can either use that or then just start applying paint directly to the paper. This is a Seth Apter stencil I'm now using, and some acrylic paints. This stencil is called ATC Mix Up, if I remember correctly, and it's one of my favorites because there's so many different patterns you can use. They are ATC sized, so you could use that, just that to one background, but I like to mix the different patterns and kind of play with different ones. These dots and kind of crosses are my go-to patterns in a way because they are so versatile. They go to almost any project. And what I use to apply the paint is just a makeup sponge. You probably know the trick, but if there's new people to stenciling, then dab first a little bit off the stencil, because if you go directly to the pattern, then it will bleed under the stencil and you don't get a crisp image. Although this being kind of the first layer, it doesn't matter that much. But if you want a crisp edge, nice pattern, then remember to kind of dab some of the paint off first. So here we are, nothing fancy, let's say, just kind of a way to break the blank page. Another thing, if you don't have jelly plate and one kind of that, let's say, free form, you can always do this. Add paint to a piece of plastic and then dab it. Dab it to your sheet, because then you are not in control that much, let's say, where you're getting the paint. Because every time you take a paintbrush or something, you probably are going to be painting, like having too much control, let's say, over the thing. So that's one way to get rid of too much of the control. Then at this stage, I'm also adding some stamping. And as this is the background, the first layer, I'm using different permanent mediums. So when I start layering on top, then the mediums I've put in here, they will hold, so I don't have to worry any inks bleeding or watercolors going somewhere I didn't want, or reacting with mediums or layers coming on top. So this is just archival ink, my go-to ink, and also the color, just jet black. If you think that's too harsh, you want something more delicate, then you can use any color, but just kind of remember that it's the bottom layer, so it might be really handy to use permanent mediums. So that's it. Not the prettiest one, naturally. Depending on the colors, it might be prettier. This burlap isn't the most beautiful, vibrant tone, but it goes to the tea kind of atmosphere or sheen. So now that I'm doing ATCs, I'm cutting these little shapes out of it, and you can see from the ready cards that there's a small border, like a little bit of green, so the background is totally green, where I can then easily write the information for an ATC. So this one is a little bit smaller, the piece. Now that I'm doing such a small project, I can kind of choose where what I want as my background. For example, I really like this part, so I can, let's say, just cut there, and then it's 2.5 by 3.5, and that's a little bit smaller, so just a tiny bit smaller. And then maybe some of this, well, actually I'm putting it there, so then it actually will probably show in the finished card, because there's quite a big mouse or something coming on top, so then I can actually see the part I was kind of going after. So that's first one. Let's cut another one, and these are perfect for collaging. So if you're doing an art journal page or a bigger project, you can then use these scraps as your first layer, kind of break the blank page that way. Then another one. And I probably should say about the cardstock, this is just white cardstock I used as the bottom layer. It's 160 grams if I remember correctly, so it's not super heavy, but still thick enough to handle the acrylic paint and the wet mediums coming on top. And then maybe just one more. if I would be doing cards, let's say, so I would need a bigger area than just these teeny tiny pieces, then I would concentrate maybe more on the placement of the different items while making the whole sheet. But as I now require just teeny tiny pieces, then I can just have fun and pick the little pieces I want. Let's see if these are the same size. Yay, I remembered correctly. Perfect. So let's adhere these to the backgrounds. For that I'm using just double-sided tape. These could act as the whole ATC, so you don't have to have the little line there. But again, it's kind of mimicking the colors that are coming then on top, and kind of a foolproof solution if I happen to mess the back also with my painty fingers or something, so it's nice and clean, and it's easier then to write the information to the ATC. Also, if you're doing a card, it kind of gives that finished look because there's the colored cardstock. Naturally, you can do that if it's a card as the last step. So let's put these on. Thank you again so much for coming today, and I'm sorry about the comments. I'm not sure why I can't see them. It would be so much nicer to actually craft with you, talk with you. I can just see who's on, so thank you. And again, if you do have any questions, I try to think what you might ask and answer them while I work, but if there's anything that I miss, then please just type the comment in, type the question in. Even though I can't see it now, I'll go through them afterwards, so you get your answer. And if I don't know, then I will find out. But any kind of acrylic paint, it's all about what you like. But for example, for me, I do like a bit fluider, like maybe normal craft grade acrylic paint for jelly printing. But if you don't have that, then just use a brayer, use your fingers. It's just kind of breaking the blank page to getting the first layer done. So now, well, this is from the different previous sheet, but these are from the same sheet, and they are totally different looking, but still they are the same. So that's kind of a handy way to make sure that you have a set, because you use the same stencil, stamps and colors throughout. Sorry about that. Then these are a cute cup of tea, so we need some tea in here. This is, probably you can see what it is. It's a tea bag, just cut and dried after use. So yes, I'm that weird, because I really like the tea color, and that's a fun way to add a little bit of something. And the tea bag is really translucent. It's sturdier than tissue paper, but has kind of the same feel to it, because it's not totally opaque. and these are mostly from what's Earl Grey, so they have a lovely scent as well. Maybe a little bit smaller, kind of coming on top. Then to adhere them, I use just a glue stick. You could use a sturdier glue as well, but as they are so delicate and I'm adding layers on top, which will then kind of mount them, secure them in place, I want this just to kind of keep them there enough so I can then add something on top. And I want the softness to kind of survive, so if I would then collage these using gel medium or any that kind of medium, then I would lose some of the softness because it's then totally glued to the background. So just a fun layer. You could use these in our journaling project as well, kind of play with the translucent softness. Well, then we have this jar. So you might notice that I actually have 2 jars of gesso here. They are both the same brand and the same, but this one is older, so it's a little bit dried, so that makes it even thicker. So while you could use, I'm doing a 3-dimensional layer using it, you could use modeling paste as well if you have that. But one option is to have a little bit dried gesso, so because it's thicker you can then get a crisper image. And I'm using another stencil. I could use the same, but I just really like this pattern, so I chose this kind of lace looking pattern to come on top. And as this gesso is acrylic based and the tea bag is so delicate, so it kind of goes through the tea bag to the background and locks it in place. One more, or actually 2 more. I like to use a silicone brush when applying thick paints, or especially doing dimensional layers through a stencil. I really like how it acts and feels. But naturally you can use an old credit card or even a brush, but the tool does make a difference about the appearance. So if I use a brush, for example, then the layer will be different looking than using something sleek, let's say, like a silicone brush or a old credit card. There we go. And I have a bucket full of water underneath my bench. So that's where I put the stencil, so the little openings won't go blocked by the gesso. Then let's move these, come on, there. Move these aside for a while, as that layer needs a bit of drying. Let's have these, and then another medium. Like I said, when I'm crafting, I'm kind of more is more, but you could use just emboss like a regular ink. I'm doing an embossed little flower to each card. It kind of echoes the flowers in the teacups, and also gives a little bit of background to the character coming on top. When I was making these samples, I didn't have it in the first place and was trying these out, but they needed something, so I added the little flowers. This is a stamp by Carabelle Studio, but again, any stamp would do. Then embossing ink and olive colored embossing powder. Again, I'm, as you can see, going around the same color scheme, mimicking the colors that are in the little fluffy bunnies and mice, sorry. While I'll stamp, I again say that sorry. I can see the comments, but I'll go through them afterwards. So if you have any questions, just type them in and I'll answer afterwards. If you don't have embossing ink, embossing powder, and all these, never mind, you can use just regular ink. This is just a fun little kind of detail to have it a little bit raised and not just flat. But using the same color scheme throughout, that's kind of my way to craft. Naturally, there's plenty of people who marvel at using opposite colors or contrasting colors. I'm not one of those. I usually go with really limited color palettes. I find it easier. But it kind of brings everything together to have the same colors. And then, sorry about the noise. Yes, the whole layer is melted. Oops, shouldn't have done that, but luckily it's going underneath. So this particular powder is opaque, so you can, oops, sorry about the concentration, you can actually see that it's green even on top of pink, and it doesn't go to like muddy color because it's the opposite color. And the reason, you can actually see where I managed to mess it up, because in opaque powders there's some white in the powder, so that makes it opaque. So if you overheat an opaque powder, it will turn white, or on top of paper it might get absorbed to the paper as well. Then I'm just adding a touch of watercolor on top, a little bit of making these stamped flowers more of maybe my own style, having something on top. Then let's make a kind of tea-ish color with a little bit red. Add more water. And another go with the watercolor. If you don't have watercolors, let's say that first, you can use diluted acrylics, but you can also use crayons or colored pencils. But for this one you need something translucent, let's say, because I'm adding some watercolor, really diluted watercolor, on top of these little critters. Why? Because they are already colored. I'm masking them. I'm fooling the eye, because when I add something, it affects the paper naturally, but it also makes maybe them appear that I would have painted them, even though I have no skill to paint these little creatures, at least like this style. But just adding some paint touches on top might fool the beholder. And it's also kind of your own little handprint there. So even though, let's say one of you, for example, use the same little creatures to do some ATCs or cards, this here is bound to be different, because when you apply the paint, you have your own hand style, own choice of colors. So that's kind of a trick, let's say, cheap trick. Then some greenish here. Whoops. And as you can see, because it's so translucent, this color, I'm not very accurate where I'm putting it. It's just a way to transform these a little bit, kind of give them more handmade look. Then let's cut these out. Where are my scissors? I probably would have gotten away with just 3, for example, because if you are in a hurry, you can always cut them in half and use the 2 halves in different cards. But now that I made 4, let's use these. And these little critters, they are cut from our 12 by 12 sheet. So those aren't our die cuts, they are cut by hand, but as they require a little bit more time than just doing these flowers, so I did that beforehand, so you don't have to see me just cut items. But the flowers are easier. If you don't do much fussy cutting, I like to use scissors. Some people love to use a craft knife. I can't use a craft knife for that. It just comes out horrible. I'm better with scissors. But whenever I'm doing fussy cutting, I'm manipulating the little critter in my hand, and the scissors they kind of put. That's my way of doing that. Let me put that aside. Then let's think. That is a little bit off, so let's put that one there. And yes, I'm adhering the flowers without the card in there. I'm more maybe concentrating how the flower is connected to the actual little figure than how it's then put in the card. It's kind of creating a background. This one could be here, yeah. So it doesn't matter that I accidentally messed up the other edge, because it's going behind the mouse. Sorry, English is not my native language. Then let's see about this one, yeah, there. Then let's flip these around, and I'm adhering them to the cards using foam tape. If you don't have pattern paper, you can always get your focal points from, let's say, from magazines, or then print something. There are plenty of different Etsy shops that sell printables, but you can use magazines, or then, like I did, from a 12 by 12 I cut these little creatures out, and it's a whole big sheet of those, so you have quite a few. So if you have a craft store nearby, depending if you can go anywhere right now, then see what they have. Let me just show you. So it's Forest Tea Party, so it doesn't even fit to the picture. But then over here there's these little creatures. So from just one sheet you would get a lot of these little embellishment you can then use on top of cards or ATCs, art journaling even. Then let's mount this one in here. Three more. Maybe there. Then two more. Come on. And then the mouse to the last one. I see there's new faces there, so hello, and thank you for joining. And like I've said earlier, but if you just joined, thank you. And unfortunately I can see the comments at the moment, but if you have any questions, just type them in and I'll go through them afterwards. So we're doing a little ATCs, and they could be done, oh sorry, let's focus. They could be done, but like I said, more is more. So let's start with this, because then I'm adding wet mediums which need some drying time, so otherwise it would be difficult. This is a step, if you're wanting to create something like this, this is a step you can definitely go without. I just bought myself a Christmas present, so I wanted to use it. So I made these little holes with the washers,
and added the thread. So they are, because these are kind of inspired by tea, and there's the little pieces of tea bags in the background. So these are kind of mimicking tea bags, but you don't have to have this big tool for making something similar. Just a office stapler, and then staple the thread in here, or then just go without. But as I got myself a new plaything, I've been thinking about this for so long, so now it felt like a good chance to treat myself. So I just wanted it to use that. So let's add a couple of those and a couple of these. So this is just me being fancy, let's say. You can just put a hole and thread the, I guess it's this way. Here you can see that it's so new that I can't remember. Yeah, I remember correctly. You can do a hole and thread the cotton twine through it, or then, like I said, use a stapler to staple the thread, or then go without totally. But if you do have something like this or something similar, then it's a fun detail, kind of echoing that tea bag feeling. Or if you want to use these as little gift tags, then this one, the ring washer, gives it kind of a finished look. Like so. Threads I can add later, but there's something in this one and not in this one. There's the pearls, which you can probably see, and then there's this one new plaything as well. Where did I put the jar? Here. So these are quite new. Effect pastes from Finnabair. These are kind of gel medium with different added shiny things. So that one has a lot of different mica and glitter. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So when it's out of the jar, it's kind of more pinkish than when it's dried. The color I'm using is called Phoenix, and to me that golden kind of hue reminds of the tea, so that's why I chose to use that one. And these paste, I have a couple of different ones. They have a lot of different sized mica, which is a mineral. The same thing if you use a glossy or shiny eyeshadow. It's the same thing that's in there. It's a really widely used product, the mica. So the big flakes are of the same stuff than the little ones. And then in different jars there's also might be glitter. But I find it handy to use a palette knife if I'm applying this sort of paste because of the varying grain size. If you don't have this kind of effect paste and you do have just glue and glitter, then go ahead. Either make a ready mix
mixing the two together and then applying it to the card, or then apply the glue to the card or whatever canvas you're working on, and then put the glitter, mica flakes, mica powder on top. Just remember, if you're doing something like this effect paste on your own, use a product that will dry clear as the base, because this one is an acrylic based product, a gel where the mica flakes are then mixed. So that's why it's a little bit pinkish looking in the jar, because the gel base itself is white and clear after drying. So if you're mixing your own effect paste, don't get alarmed if it looks a bit wacky when you start, because probably the base you are using as well is white, but then dries clear. But if you're like me, more is more, and you want different kinds of products and jars and ready-made things, then you don't have to do any mixing. It's already done for you. Depending on the color scheme, there's different ones naturally with bluish, goldish, and different tones. So you can just choose the ones that go to your project. Or if you like to mix your own, then naturally you can just use the same gel base and mix different colors. If you have a really tightly, like a jar you can close really tightly, probably they would go on for a while, so you can store them for some time. But best to do just a little bit and then use it totally in one go. These have like, what's the word? Mikä on kierrekansi? A lid you can then wind, or whatever this is, close tightly, screw on. No, that's not the word. Sorry, I'm not getting my head around what's actually a word for that kind of lock, but you probably get what I'm meaning. So they are going to be okay, especially if you use the seal underneath, because they are air drying, so the less air is in the jar, the better. And while I was babbling about the jar, I just started adhering the little screw cap. Okay, thank you, my darling. I started to adhere the little half pearls. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, it's just that these pearls have an adhesive strip, so they are all in the same strip, and I just want to use them individually, so that's why I'm cutting them loose of each other. I'm using 3 pearls per card, kind of following that triangle thing. So there's 2 in other places, and then just 1 kind of going as a triangle. If you then want a little bit of something coming on top, so the last stage, the difference between this and this, well, the thread naturally, but I might have said in an earlier live that for me it's really hard to make any project without splashes, so that's the last thing I added. If you want, you could actually use tea, because that's kind of the jumping off point, let's say, for these. So again, very diluted watercolor. So you are not going to get anything too covering on top of the little critters. But again, just something tying everything together. And that's it. Easy set of ATCs done using a, for the lack of a better word, master sheet. So they have a kind of similar background, each of them, and then mimicking the color palette of the main embellishments throughout, so everything goes together nicely. After these are totally dry, and then add the little strings and they are ready to be sent out or swapped. So sorry again for not being able to see the comments and reply immediately. Thank you so much for coming, and well, I'll just wind off or go and then start looking through the comments. I have to put my laptop on, so it may take a little while, but I'll be there. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Stay safe and bye bye.